enthusiasm. My name is Shalee Rowling, and I am your session leader for today. I would like to begin by introducing our instructional leadership team, which are role-playing as our grade level team for second grade. Our lead teacher today is Ms. Samika Swan. Our admin representative is Ms. Tracy Marks. And our second grade teachers today are Ms. Kim Leeper and Ms. Riley Moore. I would also like for you to know that next school year, an instructional leadership team member will be present at all of your grade level PLCs. So hop teams, let's give them a little love. Thank you so much. Our session objective for today, I want you to take a moment and look at our objective. You also have this in your packet. We will engage in observing a PLC huddle meeting using the 5 steps of learning. We will also discuss best practices of PLC huddle implementation and make connections to your own practices. Now let's answer the following questions. What will I be learning in this session? How can the content in this session help me be a teacher leader in my school? Let's take a couple minutes and turn and talk to your table. Now let's come back together. The 5 steps for effective learning. Let me explain how this cycle works. First, the team needs to identify the instructional need. Second, obtain new learning. The team studies data and collects and reviews facts and determines possible solutions. Third, develop. The team plans for the implementation, anticipating possible results for obstacles. Fourth, apply. The team implements the proposed solution. Fifth, evaluate. The team employs ongoing assessment of the applied solution.
So at this time, we're going to do an admin break. As you know, our district is working to equip us with our PLCs, and they want us to use best practices that are focused on student ownership and learning. Today, we will be modeling for you a PLC using the 5 steps so we can be consistent within our building and raise instructional practices so that our students receive the highest possible opportunity for academic success. Everyone that works with students is sitting in this room right now. It does not matter if you're a certified staff member or an educational assistant. If you are working with students, everyone's goal is to be able to look at their work, identify through a success criteria of what's missing, and help them either identify their strengths or focus on how we can improve that instruction for students.
Hop Squad, show us a little love. Thank you, guys. Today, you will observe the instructional leadership team pretending to be second grade teachers. They will model for you a PLC using the 5 steps for effective learning. Throughout the session, we will have pausing points that we will call step outs. And Ms. Marks will do admin breaks when she wants to share the importance of what we are doing. At the top of your note catcher, we've placed a Post-it note. Please write any questions that you have on that Post-it note. We will have the opportunity for questions to be answered during our training.
So we're going to do a turn and talk with your shoulder partner, and I want you to tell your shoulder partner what the IL team, the instructional leadership team, what are we doing today, why this is important for our school. So go ahead and take a moment. What are we doing, and why are we doing this? So as we come back together, I'm hoping that you are having conversation about, we're going to be showing an effective modeling of a PLC, and that the why this is important is we are building a consistent language within our building, and that we want to improve our instructional practices so that we can help students achieve at the highest possible level.
Let our PLC begin. Samika Swan is the lead teacher for this PLC. On your note catcher, you will find a text box on page 3. Please write down what you noticed during the session about identifying needs, obtaining new information, and developing a plan. Hop Squad, are you ready? Let's get started.
Welcome, second grade team and Mrs. Marks to our PLC huddle. Today we will be developing our instructional plan for our next unit. As we begin, let's review our current ELA data from the TCAP and our school improvement goal. You all can follow along with me in your note catcher. It's on page 2. So our 2023 TCAP data for grade 3, now grade 4, is 24.06%. Fourth grade, now fifth grade, 34.7%. Fifth grade, now sixth grade, 14.06%. And our mock ELA test that we just did for the 23-24 Master Connect data, our district second grade was at 38.6. ISES second grade was at 14.5%. District third grade is 43.1%. ISES third grade, 32.5%. District fourth grade, 42.2%. ISES fourth, 18.6%. District fifth grade, 41.9%. Fifth grade, ISES, 33.3%. Our school improvement goal reads that Ingram Sowell Elementary Administration will develop strategies that will increase academic achievement in the areas of numeracy and literacy by 3%, respectively, during our 23-24 school year. As second grade teachers, we play an important role in getting our students ready for third grade instruction. It's time for us to obtain our new learning. Our PLC huddle goal for today is, by the end of our PLC huddle, we will identify the need by reviewing student work from Unit 9 into the unit task. We will obtain new learning by looking at the lesson outline, and we will develop a plan for teaching a lesson from CKLA Unit 10, Lesson 1, to ensure students are successful in the lesson and the unit task. So let's look at the end of the unit task for Unit 9. Students were assigned to use a combination of drawings and writings to write a journal entry about the end of the Civil War. As you looked at your student work over Unit 9 into the unit task, what did you notice?
Well, I'm looking specifically at writing criteria. I think that was our main focus, and there were some things that stood out, like the focus, development, organization, and style. But to me, I'm not sure about your samples, but conventions really stood out as far as grammar, mechanics, punctuation, formatting, things like that.
I agree with Lieber. A lot of my kids are forgetting to capitalize proper nouns as well.
Okay, so we all agree that we need to use our next lesson to intently support students in conventions of writing. So let's think about what we can do in our next writing assignment.
As I look through, I think an idea could be we could use highlighters and let the students look for things like, I'm noticing here they didn't capitalize I. So they could highlight those things as a reminder.
We could also have the kids check themselves or have a partner check the kids' work. They could get together with a partner, have a peer conference, look at each other's work, and just basically peer check.
Okay. So those are great inventions for us to try with our students. So let's move to our new unit, which is Unit 10, Lesson 1. So in our Unit 10, Lesson 1, we'll be studying about the human body, the building blocks, and nutrition. What do we know about prior and future learning of this unit and this topic?
I'm pretty sure in kindergarten that they discuss the five senses and looking at our state standards, that we look and find a lot of the standards that deal with grammar, mechanics, and things like that. And we know as each year goes on, that gets more rigorous. So I'm really sure we need to focus on that.
And I know from looking at the materials that first grade also does the human body.
Okay.
And also, I know in my observations that third grade continues with the human body. They do systems and senses as well. You know, I want to just pause. I really appreciate the team's focus in using data, using student work in order to improve students' writing. The goal is to improve their writing, and you all have a success criteria you have shared with the students, and so just that focus, I really feel like goes back to connecting to the standard. It goes back to our success criteria and ultimately our students meeting the expectations. So I really appreciate your focus right now.
Thank you. We know writing is an expectation in many lessons over many grade levels, with an increase in complexity. In our unit, the core objectives will require our students to describe, explain, identify, plan, analyze, compare and contrast, and sequence. So our Unit 10 consists of 9 lessons. Our end of the unit task for asking our students is to independently write a paragraph in a journal describing a day in which they practice many healthy habits.
And I know from looking ahead in the curriculum that they're going to have 6 different writing opportunities in lesson 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. And I know on the 7th, they can use that to help support the end of task writing assessment.
Okay. So let's go ahead and look at our lesson for tomorrow. This is our primary focus today. Our primary focus will be on speaking and listening. Students will review prior knowledge of the human body and nutrition. Our primary focus will be on reading. Students will explain why the author calls the human body the human machine. Language, students will demonstrate an understanding of the tier 2 word systems. And writing, students will write an entry in their My Human Body journal describing the 5 senses. In our first lesson on activity page 1.1, students will be writing sentences to describe each of the 5 senses.
So when I'm doing walkthroughs and I come into the classroom, what can I expect students to say when I ask them, what are you learning today?
Well, Ms. Marks, we've kind of got together and we've talked about our bubbles. This year we've been really focusing on our student ownership with our bubbles. So this is one thing that we came up with. Students should say something like this. Today I'm learning how to recall or remember what I know about the 5 senses. I will be able to tell why the author calls the human body a machine and write to describe the 5 senses. When I write a story, I make sure to include details about what I remember and use details from the story. And when I write, I will use capital letters and punctuation correctly. So that's something that we think they might say if you were to walk in.
All right, so do you all think we're ready to plan our lesson?
I think we're ready.
Okay. So as we teach, remember to add our support for students by marking capital letters with a highlighter and having students to check their neighbors. We need to bring student work samples of this lesson to our next PLC huddle next week. Remember to evaluate the samples before you come and are ready to discuss what you notice.
All right, we're going to do another admin break. So you just watched our PLC where we went through the first 3 steps of the 5 steps of learning, of effective learning. And we identified the need. We also obtained new learning. And then we developed a plan. So with that, we're ready now to go apply and evaluate for our students, which is steps 4 and 5 in this process. And when we evaluate, we will take that student work and we're going to meet again to discuss that student work. Now, our PLCs happen in 5-day cycles, so we're meeting once a week. So you saw us just plan for one lesson. We would actually be looking at that week's worth of lessons, the opportunities for students to write, and looking at multiple sources of data when we come back to see as we go along, are those, the area of need, is that improving as we assess each work? So we might not necessarily assess everything together, but every day the students produce work for you, it needs to be analyzed for that student. So at this point, session leader.
Let's take a moment to have our first step out opportunity. This is time for us to pause and reflect on what we've just watched. Take 2 minutes to answer the following questions at the bottom of page 3. So moving on, you just saw the second grade team discuss through data and realize that students need additional practice and support with the conventions of writing and using capital letters and punctuation correctly. Now you will see a portion of this lesson presented by our lead teacher, Ms. Samika Swan. Use the text box at the top of page 4. Use the space to jot notes about the session. In particular, watch for how she addresses the students' needs that were addressed in the PLC. Now, let's watch and participate in capturing notes on the top of page 4. Thank you, Ms. Swan.
Good morning, my beautiful second graders.
Good morning, Ms. Swan.
Who can tell me what unit we just finished up with? Ethan?
We just learned about the Civil War.
The Civil War, that's right. We just finished up Unit 9, the Civil War. So looking over our data from the end of the unit task, you had to write a journal entry about the Civil War. I noticed as a class, we need to work on some conventions. So, what are conventions? Have you ever heard that word before? Turn and talk to your neighbor. Have you ever heard that word before? Hey, class.
Hey, yes.
Hey, have you heard that word before? Any of you heard that word before?
I have.
You have? Can you?
It's when we use capital letters and we spell words right.
Awesome, Ethan. Awesome. Conventions are rules of writing to make writing clear to the reader, such as writing capital letters, using correct punctuation, and correct spelling. There are other conventions you will learn about later, but right now we're going to focus on capital letters, punctuation, and looking at our spelling, okay? So when you hear me say we need to work on conventions, I want you to automatically think, do I have a capital letter at the beginning of my sentence? Do I have a question mark, a period, or an exclamation as my punctuation? Do I have, have I gone back and checked my spelling? Okay, so that's a word I want you to keep in mind. When I say that word, those are things I want you to check. So a good writer always goes back and checks for these kind of things in their writing. All right, so today we're going to be starting a new unit, Unit 10, the human body, building blocks and nutrition. So, do you remember learning about this unit in kindergarten and first grade? I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor. Do you remember anything about these units in those grades? Hey, class.
Hey, yes.
Okay, so you might like to share something they remember about learning about those units in kindergarten and first grade. You learned the 5 senses, okay? What else did you learn about those units?
We learned about the bones.
The bones. Okay, so you all have a good remembering about those units then. All right, so great. We're going to expand our knowledge on how our body works and how to stay healthy today. So today, our purpose for reading is to explain why the author calls our body a human machine. Have you ever heard a phrase like that, human machine? What do you think that means? Turn and tell your neighbor what you think a human machine is. So as we're reading today, I want you to be thinking, oh yeah, Miss Swan told me that our purpose for reading is that we need to find out what makes our body a human machine. So, also our purpose for learning today is to listen for information about our 5 senses and writing sentences about them. So as I'm reading and you are listening, we are going to stop and talk about how the author uses capital letters, punctuation, and spelling correctly so that we will be able to write our sentences correctly. So we're going to pretend that Miss Swan's read the story, we've stopped and talked about those things, we've talked about conventions, and now we're ready to talk about our purpose again, okay? So who can tell me what our purpose for reading was today?
Looking for conventions.
Okay. So, our purpose for reading was to find out why our human body was a human machine and to look for conventions. Way to go, Brian. We were looking for conventions, and I love how you use that word conventions. Who can tell me what conventions are again?
It's making sure you have the right spelling, you have punctuation, and you capitalize the first letter of your sentence.
Good job, Allie. Good job. All right, so now let's go to something else. Who can tell me what our 5 senses are? Our 5 senses. In that story we just read, we talked about the 5 senses. Can anyone tell me our 5 senses? Turn and talk to your neighbor. Let's just discuss it with our neighbor really quick. We might get some ideas from them. Turn and talk to your neighbor. Okay, sharp bait. Okay, so, Brian.
We have sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste, Miss Swan.
Okay, good job. So, we all know how our 5 senses could be important to our human body, right? So, could our body be a human machine without those? No, it could not be a human machine. So, they're very important to our body. So, let's look at our task for today. We will be creating a human body journal during this unit. We will be recording information we are learning about the human body to use at our end of the unit task. So at the end of this unit, we're going to use this journal to gather information to write an independent paragraph describing a day in which you practice many healthy habits. Okay? So this journal is going to be very important to us at the end of our unit. So our first entry is going to be on activity page 1.1 in our knowledge workbook. Okay? So I want you to turn to activity 1.1, and we're going to be writing a sentence about our 5 senses today. So turn and talk to your shoulder partner and discuss each of your 5 senses and listen to what your partner says. After you look at activity page 1.1, I'll just talk about those pictures really quick. Hey, class.
Hey, yes.
Everyone should be on activity 1.1. Make sure at the top it says activity 1.1. So did you get some good information from your neighbor? Did y'all talk about what you see in those pictures? Did you think about what kind of sentences I could write, what kind of journal entry I could put in my activity journal book for those pictures. Okay? So, I'm going to model the first one for you. So what is the first picture on your activity page?
It's an eye.
It's an eye, okay? So, why would they have an eye on our activity page? Ethan?
It's so that we use our eyes to see.
We use our eyes to see. So turn to your partner, and I want you to give them a sentence about your seeing sense. Okay, sharp bait.
Ooh ha ha.
Now, who would like to share their sentence with the class?
I wrote, I see with my eyes.
I see with my eyes. So that's a perfect sentence because it tells me about the picture, has the word eyes in it, and it tells what sense I use. What sense do we use with our eyes? Seeing, sight. Okay. So, I'm going to model how to write that sentence correctly using the right conventions. Now, what are conventions again?
Capital letters, punctuation, and spelling.
Spelling. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to write this on my board. So, look at my sentence. Do I have the right conventions in my sentence? Turn and talk to your neighbor. Does Miss Swan have the right conventions in her sentence? Okay. So, I see with my eyes. So I need to go back and make sure I have a capital letter. So a strategy I could use is to use my highlighter. I'm going to use my highlighter, and I'm going to highlight to make sure I have a capital letter. Okay, do I have a capital letter? Yes. What did I just do, Bryn?
You highlighted your capital letter.
I highlighted it to make sure that I have a capital letter. Okay? So, now I'm going to highlight my period to make sure I have the right punctuation mark. Okay? Now, I want you to go ahead and write that sentence down on your journal entry. I want you to copy the sentence that I have up on the board for you. And I want you to use the strategy that I just used. And while you're doing this, I'm going to give you another strategy. I want you to turn and check your neighbor to see if they have a capital letter and a correct punctuation. And you be thinking when you're writing your own sentences, there's more punctuation than just a period. What other punctuations do we have? What do we use?
We need to make sure that we space out our words
Oh,
because sometimes
Allie.
I jumble them together and then you can't read my sentence.
That is amazing. Did you hear what Allie said? Class?
Yes.
What did Allie just tell us?
To make sure we space our words.
To make sure we space our words. Thank you very much. Okay, so did everyone take the highlighter and use our strategy that we learned to highlight the capital letter and our punctuation? Okay. Did you check to see if your partner used their highlighter? Yes. Give me a thumbs up if you use those strategies. Good job. So let's read this sentence together. And Miss Swan's going to show you another strategy as I read this sentence to check. So I want you to read this sentence with me. And as I read this sentence, I'm going to clap my hands above my head for a capital letter. And I'm going to make a sound for my punctuation to know that my sentence comes to a stop. So let's read this sentence together. Are we ready? I see with my eyes. Now, we have used 3 different strategies to check to see if we have our conventions right today. Now, let's go and work on number 2 with our neighbor. What picture do you see on number 2?
A nose.
A nose. What sense do we use with our nose?
Smell.
Smell. Very good. All right, so I want you to work on this sentence with your neighbor. So I want you to make sure that you're using the new strategy we learned for checking to see if we have capital letters and punctuation. Okay, by number 2, Miss Kayla, what picture do you have again?
A nose.
A nose. Can you share the sentence that you and Bryn came up with?
I smell with my nose.
Okay. Now, did you use our strategies? Did you use a highlighter?
Yes.
Did you all use a highlighter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you check on your neighbor to make sure that they used our strategy? All right, I want you to read that sentence to your neighbor, and I want you to use the motions that we used reading that sentence.
I smell with my nose.
Good. Now, we are going to work on the last 3 independently. Remember to use the strategies we learned to help us with our conventions. I will come by and pick up your task. Before we line up for activity class today, what was our purpose for learning? Turn and talk to your neighbor really quick. What was our purpose for learning? Who would like to share a purpose for learning today?
We were identifying why the body was a human machine and also learning how to use conventions.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, quietly line up when you're finished.
Welcome back, everyone. As a reminder, you just watched a brief portion of a lesson from CKLA. Keep in mind that PLCs are held weekly. Each teacher will have taught the lessons as outlined in the pacing guide in CKLA. After instruction of the daily lessons, each teacher would have gone through the student work to see how students performed at conventions. Did they use capital letters and punctuation correctly? We will now join them in a PLC huddle as they come back together for another weekly PLC using the 5 steps for effective learning. You can jot down notes at the bottom of page 4. Notice how they identify the need and obtain new learning. Remember, if you have any questions, please write those questions on the Post-it note. We will come around and collect those so we can answer any questions at the end of the session. Hype team, where are you at? Let's show a little positive energy. Let's join the team.
Welcome, 2nd grade teachers and Mrs. Marks, to our PLC huddle. So let's go back and look at our data again. Okay, set 22, 23 TCAP data. 3rd grade, now 4th grade, 24.06%. 4th grade, now 5th grade, 34.7%. 5th grade, now 6th grade, 14.06%. Our last Mastery Connect data, the district in 2nd grade was 38.6%. ISES 2nd grade was 14.5%. The district 3rd grade was 43.1%. ISES 3rd grade 32.5%. District 4th grade 42.2%. ISES 4th grade 18.6%. District 5th grade 41.9%. 5th grade ISES 33.3%. Our school improvement goal reads that Ingram Sowell Elementary School Administration will develop strategies that will increase academic achievement in the areas of numeracy and literacy by 3% respectively during the 23-24 school year. Target meets and exceeds for the 23-24 school year. I just read that. As second grade teachers, we play an important role in getting our students ready for third grade instruction. It's time for us to obtain our new learning. Our PLC huddle for today is, by the end of our PLC huddle, we will identify the need by reviewing our student work from the last week of instruction, obtain new learning by looking at the lesson outline for the upcoming week, and develop a plan for teaching to ensure students are successful in the lesson and the unit task. Our Unit 10 end of the task is, students will independently write a paragraph in a journal describing a day in which they practice many healthy habits. You are asked to bring your student work from our last writing task since our last PLC huddle. Let's take a few minutes to share what you noticed about the work samples.
I think the highlighters were a great visual for the students. It really gave them some ownership of their own work, and looking through their samples, they really did a good job using the highlighters.
And my partners enjoyed working with their partners. They loved checking each other, and it took a few minutes. They collaborated, and they checked each other's work.
I had the opportunity to step into each of your classrooms and speak to students, and one told me that they were learning about the human body. Another student told me they had been writing every day about their stories they've been hearing. I know we're working towards student ownership, and I was impressed with a student who told me that they were writing about their 5 senses and that she was going to make sure that she put a capital letter at every sentence and ended every sentence with punctuation. I do believe a majority of the students' responses are still at the understanding and the doing level of ownership, but I do believe that the success criteria that you put in place with having kids check each other's work and the expectation that they're going to capitalize the beginning of a sentence, proper nouns, put punctuation at the end, I do believe that that is definitely making a visible difference in the student writing.
It's time for our next step out moment, number 2. Let's take 3 minutes to complete these questions at the top of page 5. Now let's turn and talk with a partner about your thoughts. Okay, coming back together. The team is almost finished with their PLC for the week. They need to develop a plan for upcoming instruction. They will anticipate possible obstacles students may encounter in their writing. Let's join the team one more time to listen. You may capture notes at the bottom of page 4 in the area labeled Develop.
Okay, going forward for the next writing task, what are our needs to support students? I believe we should continue to provide students with opportunities to self-check and to use visual tools like highlighters. I did want to share something else I also tried. I had students to clap above their heads for a capital letter and make a screeching sound for a period. I did a movement activity with them. Do you have any other supports?
I created a rubric. I thought that might another visual for my students. Ms. Marks, I was going to show you something simple, and I can cut them apart. They can have them at their desk. It's a simple thumbs up, thumbs down. Did I capitalize the letters? Did I use punctuation, proper nouns, things like that?
And I noticed that my students were misspelling words, so I created a word bank of the verbs for the 5 senses, and it helped a lot.
Okay. And also created a anchor chart that will help aid students as well over here about their writing checklist and their conventions.
Would you mind modeling for us what you're talking about with the movement? How did that look for your
So
students?
our sentence was, I see with my eyes. So I had students to do a capital letter, I, see with my eyes. That way they're actually doing the capital and making a noise at the punctuation.
And so they're doing that as they're looking at the sentence.
Yes.
I like that idea, Miss Swan. I'm gonna try to incorporate that this week.
As we get students ready for their unit writing task, it's important to go over the rubric and writing conventions each time. A word bank will also provide a scaffold for students. We have 3 more lessons that require students to write before the end of the unit task. As we teach, remember to add in our support for students through the marking of capital letters with a highlighter and a kid collaboration. We need to bring student work samples of the next lesson to our next PLC huddle. Remember to evaluate the samples before you come so you're ready to discuss what you notice.
It's time for our final step out moment, number 3. Let's take 3 minutes to complete the questions at the bottom of page 5. Turn and talk to your partners. For us moving forward, this morning gave you the chance to see 2 PLC meetings following the cycle of the 5 steps for effective learning. On the last page of this document, you will find a template of the 5 steps for effective learning cycle. Use the 2 models that you filled in during the presentation. You can use this template at your next PLC meeting to guide you. Are there any Post-it note questions that I can collect at this time? Miss Natalie did a wonderful job answering those previously. Anyone else have any questions?
Okay, so this will be the last admin break that we take, and we'll take a brief break after that. So I have some thoughts that I put together that I did not want to leave out, just to make sure that we truly are going in the same direction together. As you know, our district is working to equip us in our PLCs. They want us to use best practices that are focused on student ownership and learning. Today, we demonstrated an effective modeling of a PLC using the 5 steps. We want to be consistent in our building, and we want to raise our instructional practices so that our children are receiving the highest possible opportunity for academic success. The 5 steps of learning is a cycle, and we want to implement that going forward. We want to just start practicing. Just what we did, we want to start practicing. So as you take the document, and we want this to be kind of the heartbeat of our instructional decisions, and it will be student work. So we, as outlined, we're going to identify a need as we look at our student work. And through that analysis of the data that we have from students, we look at upcoming lessons. You all know we don't have time to stop and go back and reteach. We just aren't afforded that. So we have to take our deficits that we've identified and how do we plug them in future lessons. And as we do that, how do we scaffold for our children? Do they need, like the anchor chart we have here, do they need the visual rubric? Do they need the highlighter? Do they need the movements where they're, clapping and irking as they're putting together a sentence? So I love that. I love all of the interventions that we have for students. Once that plan is formulated, if you notice, we've developed that plan. So if you're looking through the identifying the need, I'm looking at my lesson. I'm seeing where the new learning is taking us. I develop a plan for how I plug in the deficiencies that our kids are having. And then we will never apply and evaluate in a PLC. If you look on that back page, I put in parentheses, you didn't know, you noticed we never applied it here. We apply that in the classroom with students. We go take our plan we've developed using the curriculum that we have and the need we've identified, and then we go to work. We reevaluate our students at the end of the lesson. At the end of the week, we're looking at the writing samples. Are we still seeing trends? Are those trends indicating that they are improving in conventions, or do they need more help with that? And then if they do, you saw in this case, Ms. Moore said, you know, my students, they kind of got conventions. But I noticed that they're missing some of the words that they need to describe. So I'm going to be putting up some adjectives. I'm going to be putting up some words that are going to help them in developing their sentence. Ms. Leeper created her rubric. So that's a visual checklist for them. And then the draft that we have on the, like, making sure that we're hitting these things, all of those interventions, we apply those, evaluate the students, and then start the process all over again. We come back up, come together, identify the need, and it is a continuous cycle each week of identifying those students.